Hi, I'm back with another chat with a good dear friend, Fred Hoch. Hi, Fred.
Hey, Blagica, how are you?
Good. And Fred is a founding partner of Tech Nexus in Chicago. I know many of you know Fred, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. Fred, when I think of you, when your name comes up, even though you're in Chicago, you do exude so much of your home base of where you were born. I call it Fred, California chill. For sure, seriously.
Well, I don't know about that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a great deal. I wish I was as thin and tan as I used to be when I lived in California, but certainly I resonate to keep that coolness going. Whether it doesn't always come out, you can certainly ask my team members. I'm not always that calm, but sometimes I am.
And the reason why I bring up California, in all seriousness too, you being the founding partner of Tech Nexus, California in Silicon Valley has such huge, tech world, and you know that well. And now you're in the Midwest, you're in Chicago. Let's go back in time a little bit and talk about how Tech Nexus started, what the heck it is, and how it's changed over the years in terms of what
Yeah.
your goals are.
Yeah, so I moved to Chicago 20 years ago. I was forced to move to Chicago by my wife, who was we had young children, and she wanted to come back home, and so I was excited to do that. Forced as a joke, obviously. Came to Chicago 20 years ago, and at the time, before I came to Chicago, I had started a number of startups, and I was also an evangelist for the national software industry. So my job was to fly around the country, talk on behalf of the industry, talk about where things were going as it related to the software industry. And when I came to Chicago, I hooked up with a man named Terry Haberton, who's still my business partner 20 years later. And we founded what's called the Illinois Technology Association. And that really was one of the first efforts in Chicago, not the first, because there was an organization before, but it was a strong effort to bring the various parts of the technology community in Chicago together, in particular Illinois name, but Chicago in particular. One of the things about Chicago in particular was, unlike a lot of tech industries like San Francisco or Austin, where everybody sort of knows each other, Chicago really at the time had 13 different tech industries around various industries. So you had the travel people doing their thing, you had the financial people doing something different, you had the food people doing something different. And our organization really was around how do we bring those people together to share common ideas, to work together, to learn from one another. It was tough. They didn't want to at the beginning because they thought of themselves in their particular industry, whether it was travel or whatever it was. But over time, we broke them down and built an 800 person or 800 company organization, excuse me, that I think was a very keen part of the early, or at least the after the turn of the century growth of Chicago as a technology hub. Along the way, it's a long story. Sorry, as you know, the story is long, Boogie. Along the way, we are building this club, and so we also needed a clubhouse for that club. We figured there was no watering hole, there was no place where these people would come together. So we built a little co-working workspace incubator, whatever you want to call it, space. We never really got the right name. I think the best name we ever had was Clubhouse. And it just attracted people. And up till COVID, we had, with 60,000 square feet. It was never empty. It was always full. And it was a place where startups could grow, could build, could network, could collaborate, could find ways for what we call propinquity, which is a sort of random esoteric word that means serendipity created by place. And over 600 companies along the way have grown up in that space since its founding.
Now, is the ITA still around, the Illinois Technology Association?
No, the Illinois Tech, just before COVID, ITA was acquired by another organization here in Chicago. I had left some years before. For whatever reasons, it decided to merge with someone else. And so some of its programs, some of its awards remain, but the organization doesn't remain at this point. It's now part of another organization.
Got it. And the reason why I also want to have this chat now that I'm back home in the Detroit area is, was it last year, a year and a half ago? You were in town, we had beers, and I am so blown away by there's Tech Nexus. You mentioned co-working, startups, and support. Would love going to when you moved to. You were over at Wacker and Adams, and now you're closer up the street at the Opera House.
Yeah, the Opera Building, yeah.
Sorry, I still say the Opera House, even though it's the Opera Building. Just like I can't call it Willis Tower, it's the Sears Tower. Anyway, and I'm noticing the investments that you guys are doing. So We have a lot of Midwest investment chatter happening in the area. Talk to me about what Nexus is up to and your portfolio of investments and what you've been doing the last couple of years.
Yeah, so we built a space which is now was originally called TechNext, it's now called Teamworking. But what happens, we built through the association, through the space, we built this incredible ecosystem. It included startups, growth stage companies, large corporations, venture capitalists, anyone who is interested in technology and innovation. And along the way, some 7, 8 years ago, a bunch of corporations started showing up at our door and saying, "Hey, can we tell you something?" Sure. What do you want to tell us? Listen, we don't want to let anybody know in the public markets or let our competitors know, but we're really bad at innovation. We said, well, that's not really a secret. So thank you for telling us that you're not innovative.
Right.
And, but okay. And they said, we really want to find a way to tap into this energy, this ecosystem that you've built in a way that can help us drive those corporations forward. These are corporations in the two, three, five, $20 billion corporations who are looking and saying, wow, we really want that energy, we want the culture change, we want ideas that we just don't have within the confines of our own organization. And so you spend about a year and a half, sort of as a side project, trying to find a way to do something that was valuable. A lot of what had gone on before was really theater. So many of you have probably you've been to it, sorry, Blakey. It's events where, they talk about about it being innovative, but the innovation dies with the event. Or we like to say there was lots of pet the entrepreneur days where top executives at major corporations would come and say, oh, isn't that cool? And then they would go away. And so, or they do a hackathon that really didn't go anywhere. And so we started to do a little of those things and really wasn't satisfying, both because it wasn't productive, but it also just wasn't financially viable either, right? It wasn't a good way to build relationships. So through trial and error, we fell on this model of what we call venture-enabled innovation. And the idea is that to really build strong relationships, to really build commercial relationships between corporations and ventures, relationships where the ventures technology, where their ideas, where their entrepreneurship could be played out, was you had to have the corporations invest in the ventures.
Mm.
But as soon as you say investing, corporations freak out, or they think about it from a model that's like, oh, how are we going to spend $2 million per investment? We fell upon this idea of stop trying to make three, four, two, three, $5 million investments, make 15 to 20 bets a year at a much lower level, 250,000, 500,000 a pop, and spread your bets across this entire ecosystem of companies, and particularly around companies that were really about the future products and services that you wanted to build. So if you're an audio company and you want to use and you sell microphones and all of a sudden you want to get into conferencing, how do you do that? You invest in technologies around conferencing. Or in that same vein, if you want to get into the auto industry, what are the technologies you need to invest in around microphones and the auto industry? For example, probably don't know, but if you drive a Porsche, I do not, but if you do, the way they tell if the ground is wet is they use a microphone. It's better than a moisture sensor. It's better than sight. It's sound. The sound is the best way to determine that. It's a market that the sort of
That's
our
pretty
part of.
cool. I learned something new today.
There you go. So we ended up having this model, which is where we are today, which is around helping corporations invest. First of all, build these ecosystems through investment, and then harness those ecosystems to drive future products and services.
Now, when did the shift into that model start? And what is the volume of
Yeah,
activity that you're willing to share about
sure.
the movement?
One of it was a shift in the model because we still retain the old stuff. We have the legacy business here. We're still doing angel investing. So have a big space here in Chicago. This is really more of an extension and more of, I guess it was a shift in the sense that I spend most of my time on it now as opposed to doing other things along the way. So that was about, I think we made our first investment just over 8 years ago. Since that time, we've made over 270 investments worldwide. It was an absurd pace, and I have to say, we made them all in the first 6 years, and a ton after COVID. We probably made a quarter of them in the last 2 years, particularly sort of not a lot in the last year, but in the year before that. And the idea once again was that by making lots of bets, you can find one or two that win for your strategic benefit. We obviously want a financial return. We want to have good returns on the investments, but first and foremost for the corporations, their idea is how do I get strategic value out of it? And so to them, spending $500,000 in getting $2 million back is wonderful, but if you're a $10 billion corporation, what do you care? spending $500,000 building a new product that leads to tens of millions of dollars in revenue is much more exciting, much more interesting than just that financial return. So we've had to balance those two and figure out what works best in terms of our partners to make sure that we're getting both financial and strategic return.
Are there any partners or deals that you can share in terms of success stories or
Sure. I
investments
mean,
that did really well for you?
yeah, I mean, once again, how did it do really well, right? Do really well financially or do really well strategically, right? So certainly we've had ones that are financially beneficial that have not done great for from a strategic standpoint. But one recently that's been really proud of is Harbinger Motors. Harbinger Motors has built a chassis and an electric motor around class 4 vehicles. So every electric van you see, I'm sorry, every delivery van you see, every sort of low end or smaller RVs are class 4 vehicles. And there really wasn't a player in the electric space in that market. We invested in a company called Harbinger 2, 3 years ago. They've been able to work with our partner Thor and bring to market the first fully electric RV. It was announced last year. The first one rolled out, I think, September of this year. It's won all sorts of awards, but it's a real innovative product because it turns out that RVs, anyone who's driven an RV knows it's a clunky thing that you drive, and most people aren't comfortable driving it because it isn't very fast. But once you have an electric RV, you have a lot more thrust, a lot more speed, and it makes the experience much better. And so we've helped Thor in partnership with Harbinger to bring this vehicle to market. And we're excited about its future because it also came to market much faster than anyone thought possible through this idea of ventures, corporations working together with someone like us who brings an entrepreneurial bend to it and can sort of push things forward in a way that didn't before. So you probably just saw they raised a Series C. It was announced today they raised a Series C. Really excited about where they're going.
And where are they based?
They're based in Garden Grove, California. So certainly not in Chicago per se. The heart of the RV industry is Elkhart, Indiana, right along
Yeah,
the Michigan border.
that I know.
And so we've been able to bring Chicago, Elkhart, and Garden Grove, California all together.
So you mentioned Chicago, and I would love to also, pick your brain about just overall Midwest innovation tech in general, because I'm not an investor, obviously, but I sense the change and see the changes and love the folklore, which really isn't folklore, but the stories of being, at Corner Bakery with all the dudes who started all the companies and having coffees in the morning. Such a special time. I don't discount my time. I mean, it was amazing to be part of it. I absolutely loved it. It's a sense of pride. So trust me. But I think about what I'm trying to compare it to is there was a different type of energy in those days. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it, but there was an energy of everyone starting something or people want to start something. And I sense a bit of that energy coming back from I mean, obviously I'm in the Detroit area, so I do sense it here. But talk to me about that. Talk to me about what you see in terms of shift, whether it's good or bad,
Yep.
and overall, not brain drain, but the flywheel of VC, thinking
Mm.
about the Orbit's legacy, folks who are at Orbit's like me who then invested in other companies, Grubhubs, the Groupons, and how that also, with the investment from some of the founders,
Yeah.
helped start other types of companies. That energy was awesome. Is the
Yeah.
energy still there in Chicago? And the second addition to that is, do you see that energy coming back in different Midwest regions?
So lots of questions there. So let's try and
I
break it
know.
down.
I know.
And you and I were sort of got to know each other in the early sort of, I got to Chicago in 2005. You had been here a year or two before, I believe, right? Or maybe at the same time. So you were there when Orbit's founded around 2000, 2001. Listen, I think that the period post internet boom in Chicago was a good one. I think that the work we did at ITA, I think people like you, I think organizations like Tech Cocktail and other things that were out there really helped to create an ascendancy for Chicago. Groupon was a Roman candle that lit us, for a long
Yeah.
time. Grubhub really helped put Chicago on the map as a technology center, particularly a technology center around the industries that we're good at: travel, food, fintech, etc. And so that period from 2005 to sort of 2019, I think 2019, 71 was created. Lots of things were created along the way that really made Chicago, it really brought the community together. There was a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of things happening. Obviously, COVID screwed everybody up, not just in Chicago, but everywhere else, right? I'm not sure I can blame sort of Chicago's position as a technology community right now completely on COVID, although it certainly didn't help as it did in other things. But I think coming out of COVID now, you're starting to see Chicago begin to grow as a technology community again. And by the way, this is except for San Francisco, this is the normal course of any technology community. I could pick to any city, Canada, London, Austin, Miami, and there's always an up and a down over time. There's very few that keep the momentum going for a long, long time. It's just the cycles of life. And even 2 years ago, no, everyone was moving out of San Francisco, if you remember, because they all were mad at the city. And they're all back now for a variety of reasons. But the fact of the matter is, it ebbs and flows over time. So I think that Chicago now is sort of it has combined its history we just talked about, with the real practicality, the real sort of let's get shit done, excuse me, done mentality, to bring us back to a new place. And I think some of the things you see are around in Chicago is a much more cohesive group around certain things like quantum, certain things around energy, around data centers. A lot of things that we see are happening that probably couldn't have happened 15 years ago will pay big dividends for us in the future. We're also realizing in Chicago, and I'll get to Detroit in a second, I think that we have, well, hold on a second. We have an interesting place in the AI ecosystem. But to speak to Detroit, I think you've seen that also, right? You see what happened with Michigan Central. You've seen a new lab obviously preceded that and sort of was meant to be a part of that. You're seeing leaders in Detroit coming together and saying, how do we use the history we have in automotive, in manufacturing, to really create the next generation of companies? And so, whereas in all these cities, or at least Midwest cities, there was a sort of, I don't call you euphoric because that's the wrong answer. There was a irrational exuberance, maybe is a better way to describe how you were thinking about tech. I think you see a real concerted effort to say, who are we? What do we really have strengths in? And how do we put that to play effectively, to play on the national and global stage?
Topic that's prickly that came up here in the Detroit area, data centers. A data center that is proposed vis-a-vis Oracle and OpenAI and Stephen Ross. For those who don't know, the Stephen Ross School of Business at U of M. It's a data center that's going to be outside of U of M in Ann Arbor. And it's going to be supplying initially, they say 2,500 jobs to construct it, then 450 jobs afterwards to maintain and so on and so forth. A lot of pushback locally. I spoke with my state senator about it. I posted about it, and there are environmental concerns, other issues. I know that the trade said that they were for it. And I know that back Arizona had an issue with the data center, and the reservoir water seemed to, go away with that data center. And I also am a realist, as you know, when it comes to AI, trains left the station. We need computation power. As a Californian, I almost wanted to say it like the SNL skit, The Californians, in that voice.
We'll get on the 405. We'll go to Topanga, and we'll get there. You're right.
What are your thoughts on AI data centers and the way that the plans are put together and the overall effect of a community, short term and long term?
There's a lot of activity going on as it relates to the entire technology environment right now. AI is big, AI is huge. It's left the station, as you put forth, no question. It's going to require a lot of computational power. That computational power is going to come from data centers. Those data centers need to be fed by lots of electricity. Now, the reality is that to do a Gemini search right now, it takes 10 times the energy that it does to do a Google search. That is not sustainable long term. And so we're going to have to figure out a different situation. Data centers are going to be the heart of that computing. Let's assume we can solve the energy problem, which I'm not assured we can, or I don't believe we can at this moment, but hopefully we can. Data centers are going to be the key part of that. You're absolutely right. There's 2,500 people to build the one in Michigan. It will not employ that many people after. It'll employ 10, 20, 1/10 of that amount of people. So it's a question of, do you want those data centers in your neighborhood? And communities are going to have to decide what the long-term benefit is and what the short-term benefit is. Certainly, it's not going to produce long-term jobs for the most part. It may have an impact on energy prices, but it's necessary to build technology, to have computation, to build technology industries going forward. So it's not a simple yes, no binary question. It's a question of, you got to look at each situation differently and figure out how it plays into the overall situation. I have to say, though, we are building in this country so much computing power. Even, and maybe I'm stupid, but I just don't know how we consume that much in the near term. Most of what's going on in AI right now is using a very limited amount of the total computing power they have at their disposal. It's not taking more than 10, 20% of what they already have up and running. And as we add more, who knows what's going to happen. it's going to be fun to watch, or it could be a complete disaster. Who knows?
You did bring something up that I always wondered. I wonder if does it exist? You know how you can go on any laptop and do a speed test to see how quick your, computer's
Yeah.
functioning? Is there some type of ticker? I would love to access a ticker that shows me to what you just said. Okay, here's all the Americans doing Claude, Perplexity, Grok, all the stuff here, and here's the capacity of energy here, and here's what's being used. That would
Well,
be amazing to see. That's got to be publicly available,
probably
right?
somebody does, but there's three parts to that. There's the computing power, and then there's the energy that is supporting that computing power, right? So there's a reason 3 Mile Island was restarted, right? As being restarted because we need nuclear power to do what we need to do. There's a reason that we're tapping into sources we haven't tapped into a long time. Now, this may all go, if quantum works, it could be done faster and cheaper, hopefully, and cooler. So it may change the dynamic. We'll figure it out. We always do.
Let's play the game. What's that game? Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
Yeah.
Let's do like a 5 minute, if not or less, overview of quantum
Yeah. I'm,
because people come to me and like, what?
yeah.
And I try to explain quantum. And I also know that to your earlier point, Chicago, Illinois is doing a lot within quantum computing in terms of a sector. What is quantum computing? Why should the regular everyday person care?
Yeah,
Or should they?
I won't look smarter than a fifth grader on this because I'm no expert. I'm just going to look at it from a business standpoint. And the answer is big ass computer designed differently than it's designed today in terms of the way it processes information and does it at a speed that is not even just faster, it is astronomically faster than what we're doing today. So, what a problem would have taken 100 hours on a regular computer, it's going to take 1 second on a quantum computer when it's up and running. Those numbers are, relatively right. But they cost a lot to make. They need to be really cooled, and you can't have a quantum computer every corner. You have to have it sort of in certain places because the amount of energy it takes to run those processes is so enormous. So that was a cheap and dirty story about quantum. I'm not, I certainly am not an expert talking about qubits and how they all play into it, but the fact of the matter is it changes the game you know, because, because things can be figured out much, much faster with quantum computer than we can today. To the point where we may be able to, some believe that quantum computers will give us the answers to how we all began. They'll solve the Big Bang question.
Okay, I'm going to keep digging because I love this stuff. For again, the layperson, and this is why I wanted to ask you because it is about computing and energy and it's tied together. I think what's happening is utter confusion. And it's understandable. Quantum computing, big ass computer, do things wicked fast.
Mm-hmm.
Then, as you mentioned before, Gemini, which is vis-a-vis AI, put stuff in, what's in my fridge, make this for dinner for me, or make me a vibe coded app.
Sure,
Okay.
that's the idea. Okay, great. Yeah.
Both of these things take energy. But then we also talk about data centers. So, and I think I need to draw like a Venn diagram while I talk to you, but you have these data centers that are being built. Are the data centers that are being built right now purely to service AI and that computation?
Yes.
And or can the data centers be a twofer whereby it's a data center for AI computation, but also supporting the potential quantum computer being built down the road?
I don't think that's not why data centers are being built today, and I don't know the answer as to whether or not they support quantum computers down the road. I mean, I think that it's an interesting question. No, I don't believe they are, but I'm not an expert, so don't hold me up to that. But what we're building today is around AI. It's around computation around AI. The quantum computer should replace the data center at some point because you'll be able to make
Okay. Okay.
be able
Perfect.
to make the computations faster. Or you may have a data center that has lots of quantum computers in it if you got to be that small and could make it energy efficient, etc., as opposed to what we have today. So the quantum computer replaces what we have today. It's just a house for it.
But if it was a Venn diagram of like a data center computation and quantum computers, the shared thing is obviously energy,
The
to
shared
your
thing
earlier
is
point.
energy, absolutely no question.
So we need a bunch of energy for both. And going back to the data center situation in a Saline Township is where it's being located. The consortium, if you will, said that it'll be using industrial rates from DTE. The consumer charges shouldn't go up. The consumer cost shouldn't go up. That's again, obviously TBD. I'll be watching it closely too, because it is fascinating that you have this, Oracle, OpenAI, and Stephen Ross type of consortium. So, well, I guess we'll just TBD on that. Now, as we talk back,
Listen. At the end of the day, it was no question. We need to figure out how to produce more energy. We need to produce how to do computation with less energy, and we need to produce more energy in the near term to figure that out. And the answer is not just we burn more oil or we burn more natural gas. We have to figure out various ways to tap into energy in new and innumerable ways to drive this new paradigm.
So given Illinois and Chicagoland is really taking the lead in terms of quantum computing tech, is it also following where there's research and innovation being done around energy use in
Yeah,
general?
great question.
Okay.
So one of the reasons we are a leader in quantum is that we had already had energy infrastructure in place. So the
Mm,
south, it's being built on the big quantum center in Chicago is being built on the grounds of a former steel plant out on the border with Indiana.
it is? That's where it's going?
Yeah, Southworks steel plant. So
That's awesome.
what made that place really interesting was it already had energy infrastructure built into to provide and support the quantum center. You didn't have to build the energy infrastructure from
Okay.
scratch. Chicago or Illinois has a number of other locations that are similarly built out and are similarly fallow, refineries, some other mills, etc., where the energy infrastructure is already there, just not turned on. So
Got it.
Illinois is a unique place because of that. I would guess Detroit has some similar opportunities like that too. I just don't know them because I'm not as close to it as you are.
Yeah, if anybody yeah, that's interesting because there's so many things that have been built here around, well, obviously the auto industry, but you'd think there'd be some things that can support it. Well, let's expand a bit when we talk about Midwest in general. Talked about Detroit a bit, talked about Chicago. What are your thoughts when you talk to other investors and under other executives of different brands? Steve Case, I think, championed the
Yeah.
Heartland, and Steve Case, if you guys don't know who he is, AOL, go look him up. There's so much happening in the Midwest with people doing the thing and getting her done. How do you feel as an investor, as someone who's been in the industry for decades? How do you think we're doing as a region when it comes to investment in new things? I'm not trying to do the coast versus the Midwest.
Yeah, it's
It's just
interesting.
about economic value.
Yeah, I think that listen, so we've made, I said, 260 or 70 investments. Only 5% are in Chicago. And not because we don't love Chicago, but because some of the things we're looking at or the technologies we're looking at are all over the world. And what you're seeing is that because of the cost to start companies, because of the change in the way we look at work after COVID, in terms of the way money is now flowing, in terms of the way people will look beyond their own shores these days. You're seeing lots of centers of excellence being built up in certain areas that normally wouldn't have got to play before, right? So you're seeing robotics in Carnegie Mellon around their university. You're seeing Detroit do their thing around manufacturing. So the zeal to send it all to San Francisco these days is not as large as it once was. Now, counter that against the fact that a lot of the AI technology, which is essentially software, right? AI is essentially software, and that's the history of the valley. A lot of that's going to the valley, and there's a good cluster there. But that doesn't mean all the other technologies can't be built in other places in a different way. And I think the Midwest is in a good position to capture some of those things we need. Deep tech, deep hardware manufacturing. These are areas where the future is going to be stronger probably than the software industry, where what is it, like 68% or 70% of all money is going to AI technologies right now. And so uh, that'll that bubble will burst at some point, but a lot of the other money is going to this hardware, the deep tech, the manufacturing, bio in ways that plays well to the Midwest, but plays well to other centers. So, for example, if you look at Chicago, back to we have 13 industries, we have some of the most robust history and their most data sets that are the critical to the future of AI. We're not building a ton of AI technology companies here in Chicago, but we'll have the data models, we'll have the LLMs that come out of the 100-year-old companies understand manufacturing in a way that no one in Silicon Valley does.
Interesting.
So the combination of the two puts Chicago in a good place. Same thing, I think, for Detroit and some of the industries you have there. But I think though it can be said for a lot of other places too, a lot of opportunity.
Well, Fred, you're also a parent, and I was at TEDx yesterday with AI, and they built vibe code, and so all these other things that are coming out of AI to do things quickly. As a parent, you might be biased, but just curious on your POV when you hear a lot of tech leaders and folks saying you don't need to go to college, don't go to college. Given what you're seeing
Yeah.
and what the opportunities are, what are your thoughts? Now, I that this is a different conversation because I do think that the trades are things that people can do. But in general, what are your thoughts on people saying, yeah, don't go to college, just get a certification and call it a day?
Yeah. So just to by way of knowledge, I have three children. One has just graduated from the University of Washington. One's at UCLA, and one's still in high school. So I never looked at college, in my own opinion, as simply a learning environment for book smarts. I looked at it as a place where you could go and mature, learn
Yeah.
about yourself, grow as a person, build relationships that you couldn't otherwise get by being at home or being not being on your own. So I think all those aspects are important part of going to the college. Does it need to be 4 years? Is it new year round? Okay, you can debate those all you want to figure out how it goes. But I think the college experience is dramatically changing these days because work is part of that experience now. But still, my daughter, my son like to have a good time too, and they do, and they've learned a lot through the process. But it's not for everybody. And it's not the way everybody is going to mature and grow. And so trades are important too. Some people use AI to do their own thing, to be able to get up to speed quicker and to be able to make a career going for. It's not a one size fits all these days anymore. And so everyone has to make their own choice. If you would ask me that question 4 years ago, five, maybe 7 years ago, I said, absolutely, my child has to go to school, has to go to college. I'm not sure I would answer that question the same now if they had a path forward that they were trying to pursue, that they could articulate in a meaningful way. I don't think I'd have the same you must go to college mentality that I probably had before. All that being said, we also have the problem that we have a lot of isolation in society, a lot of isolation, particularly in men, but across all of society. And so college as a getting people out of isolation thing, if it does, is probably a good thing too. So lots of factors play into it, but I'm with you. Not sure it's for everybody in the way I thought it was 7, 10 years ago. And because I'm a son of two PhDs. So for me, college education was always first and foremost. Not that I don't believe in it. I just think it's different these days. And I'm sure your children, I'm sure, are going to college or thinking about colleges, but also thinking, do I need to go?
You know, they're yeah. I mean, the older one for sure. The younger one, I'm probably, but I'm in the same boat of I don't know, whatever floats the boat. But as long as they have a plan and it's not like willy nilly. Two more things I want to talk about before I let you go. One, I always joke, but I don't joke. I actually do think it in my heart, not just from an emotional standpoint, but history, manufacturing. I really do think Chicago and Detroit are cousins. I do. I think they're cousins. And when I look at the parallels of how Michigan's run, how Illinois is run, and and it's not as if obviously the governor of Illinois, JB Pritzker, really well. JB, he's the governor of Illinois, but I'm still used to calling him JB because I knew him as JB before he was the governor. He was so pro technology and understood it and still seems to be that. I know Gretch, Big Gretch, she I know is also supportive of technology and startups. I'm mentioning this to you because I'm wondering, in your experience, do you find that different regions are more successful in what they do technology wise if they have a governor or folks at their capital who get it? Because I keep thinking about the testimonies and the things that were going on in DC about when it was Crimson Hexagon and data and Facebook and Meta and Zuck and all the privacy drama. And so many of our politicians didn't understand the internet.
Yeah.
What is your experience with private public partnerships when it comes to innovation technology, and who champions it and the speed of that championing?
Well, JB and Gretch sounds like a great Disney show we create. They could be wizards or something, right? Listen, I firmly believe that public officials have a key part in building any region going forward. If they're proactive, if they're smart. When we started the ITA, no one down in Springfield, Illinois cared one bit, about the technology industry. And it hampered us. It was hard for us to get the rules applied that would be beneficial to grow the technology industry. Actually, for the most part, they hurt the industry through taxes that made no sense and sort of put a hamper on on the technology, in particular the software industry over time. So I think it's critical that public officials understand what resources they have and how technology plays into those resources and are champions of their industry. Right? Rahm Emanuel was a tremendous champion of the technology industry in the city of Chicago. Was a tremendous champion of the technology industry in the private sector and continues so in a public sector. It's that combination of their leadership along with bringing business leaders together to do things that really leads to success. And you're seeing that early stages in Michigan. I know you guys are a little behind where Chicago was or going through your next revolution, but Governor Whitmer, I'll call her, not Gretch, is doing it. And certainly there are tech leaders, not just in the Fords that helped with Michigan Central, but some of the people that have made money are working with her, as I see, to really bring the technology industry, and it plays nationally and globally. It's one thing for them to say it themselves, another one they can bring the business community together in a meaningful way. So I absolutely believe they're part of the solution. They're definitely not, hey, get out of the way and leave us alone. That doesn't work either. It's bad habits and really limited success.
Do you wanna call it now? Do you think Rahm's gonna run for president?
Rom is running for president. I think Rom's running. I think JB is running. I think Gavin Newsom's running. I think they're all running. Every one of them's running.
Okay, you heard it here first.
And you surely didn't hear first. There's lots of pieces around that.
I know. I just Gavin has the best hair, and I say that jokingly. This is why I say he does have good hair, but I mention him because when Mitt Romney was running for president, all my mom's friends were like, "He's got the best hair because he's got the best hair."
Looks play into it whether we like it or not these days. Luke,
I know.
gender, history all plays into it these days in ways that if the smartest person would win all the time, then it would be a different world. But that's not the way it works.
Now before I
Not
let you
if any of those
go.
people I mentioned are not smart. I'm just saying.
Oh, yes, don't worry. And before I let you go, the last thing I wanna talk about is you said something to me, when you have, like, I always just the way I think, my do imagine my brain like a card catalog. That's just how I've learned all my life. I just put things in a card catalog. And you said something to me years ago that I've never been able to forget, and I think it's so spot on as, I'm a Gen Xer, you're a Gen Xer. And you had said to me, and you actually wrote something about this, I think, about the people who really could be great leaders in our world, in our country, Gen Xers. In terms of our experience and so on. And as I've gotten older and talked to other people, male and female, I just sense this sense of just being tired. Obviously we've had the biggest job losses in quite a long time in October. And I'll, do the same drumbeat you hear in different media outlets about AI taking jobs. And Gen X is tired. Elder care,
I'm not
kids are going to
tired.
college.
Are you tired? I'm not
Well,
tired.
I'm not tired, but it's also you and me. Like I would think we're kind of a different category of Gen Xer because we're always playing with these tools.
Yeah.
What would you say to a Gen Xer in the following scenario? Male or female, every day they have a job that they drive to, that they go to. They leave their house, kids go to school, they might go to the gym if they can sneak it in. They're driving to work, they're active all day, crank, crank, crank. They're driving home. But in the back of their minds, they're like, well, crap, I need to learn more AI. I don't know it. But they roll into their house at 6 o'clock, dinner, bond with their children. And by 8:30, you want to put on your comfy pants and maybe binge watch Slow Horses on Apple TV or
Great show.
something else. And Michael loves that show. What do you say to them right now in the state of work and where we are and learning new things as a Gen Xer?
I'm gonna push back on the premise a little bit, Bulgitsa. What I'm seeing
Please.
is, it used to be you retired at 65 and that was it. And then you went and played golf for the rest of the year. What I'm seeing is a lot of people my age, I'm a few years older than you, who are saying, I'm my early fees, I'm figuring out what I want to do. What do I want to do for the next 25 years? And they're thinking that way. And they're thinking about how do I add value to my life, to my family, to society in a way that I don't think I saw past generations doing, thinking about it from a 25-year horizon. So I can point to dozens of people who are looking and saying, okay, I've had a great career for 25.
There's a pause. Note the pause at 45 minutes and 56 seconds.
Sorry, we have a shitty connection today. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good. You
Let me
could
finish.
start with,
I'll restart the question, your answer, your
okay,
question.
okay.
So if that's okay. So Lisa, I'm gonna take umbrage with your premise. Actually, I believe that there is a whole generation of people in Generation X who are thinking about the future in a decade's terms, not in one decade or the next 5 years. So I'm seeing dozens of people my age. As I said, I'm a little older than you, a few years older, but I'm in my early 50s, who are looking and saying, what am I going to do for the next 25 years? Not what am I going to do for the next 5 years, I'm going to do the next 25 years. And they're very much committed to not only what am I going to do, but how do I do it so it's helpful to society, to the future generations, etc., in a way that I don't think we thought of before. We're always sort of Generation X because we were smaller, because we were, we're tougher, as they say. And you can find 100 memes about how, we were thrown out of the house at midnight at 8 a.m. and didn't expect to be back till dark, and we survived. What do these helicopter parents do now? I think there's a whole bunch of us thinking about the future. AI is part of that, and they're saying, how do I combine this into doing things that are useful? Bullish on the future of Generation X as a key part of politics, business, society, problem solving in a way that's around taking on brand new careers and doing things differently in the way it did it before. And so I'm sure lots of people will come home and get comfortable, and that's okay. But I think there's just as many who are thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to play golf every day. I want to do
Well, I don't
some meaningful.
the thing is, I don't think you're wrong. I actually agree with you because when I talk to friends, I say we've got 25, 30 years of left of our lives. I find that exciting.
Yeah.
But let's be real, depending on who you're talking to, I still think a lot of Gen Xers were in the mindset of, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my job or I'm about to lose my job. And they're trying to find that time to develop that next skill set. Now, just like you said, we're kind of a different breed where I'm always immersing and learning. But maybe that's it, Fred. Is it, to be blunt, is it the fact if there are those Gen Xers who are afraid of losing gigs or skill sets, is it a bona fide kick in the pants of, hey, you dealt with water out of a water hose. Your mom kicked you out of the house and couldn't get in, until 6 o'clock for dinner. You had to sit outside and play in the woods, play with ants. Take that same MO and figure something out and be upset a little bit, complain, but here's all these free tools to learn it, get her done.
I think it's going to be fun to watch over the next 5 years. I really do. And I think you and I have talked a lot about sort of Generation X needs to take their spot, right? Why do we have an 80-year-old? Why do we have two 80-year-old presidents in a row? It's ridiculous. I don't believe a 30-year-old has the wisdom. Very few 30-year-olds have the wisdom to be 35 to be president, to be a leader in that way that you need to be. So I think we're due, right? And hopefully we'll be able to use the hard nosed parts of our life to put forth some great opportunities for the future of America and the world.
Well, Fred, thank you for spending time with all of your tech Chicago wisdom of the things. It was always good to connect with you. Well, not IRL, but virtually. And any links you want to provide or places they can
Yeah.
find you and the Tech Nexus?
Yeah, check us out at technexus.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Fred Hoch, Hoch. Happy to talk to anyone. Just drop me an email and see if I can be supportive and helpful to you.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, pizza.
Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.